Hello everyone, this is Jotto, and welcome to cards that I would like to see changed in the future. Yes. Now, there are three categories for cards on this list. Overpowered cards, badly designed cards, and underpowered cards, and there's a lot of overlap between the three categories. Now, with the balance patch coming up next week, I'm not expecting the majority of these to be changed. However, I will say when I get to them which cards I think will be changed next week specifically. But this list just encompasses the main cards that I think should be changed in some regard. This is not every card I have a problem with in the game. These are just the ones that don't fit in terms of balance or in terms of design. So we'll start with the ones that are basically current balance issues that will be changed because of the decks that are being overpowered either this month or next month. So we'll start with elves then. Now I've got three potential nerfs for elves here. There's Tornado Outbreak being too efficient for what it does, and I haven't got Amber Strike here. The reason for it is because Tornado Outbreak and Amber Strike, like Amber Strike is better with Hermeleon, yes, and it's technically more powerful in a lot of situations, but Tornado Outbreak kind of does do the, it's the catch-all. Basically, it is the catch-all trick, and you can use it end of turn, and it's really kind of neutering a lot of cards from seeing play right now, and so I think Tornado Outbreak has to be toned down a bit. Well, it's one of the things that you could do. There's basically three ways you can look at this. You either slow them down, so get rid of some of their tempo boosters, so that's Tornado Outbreak and Summoner Druid, because Summoner Druid saves 2 mana total, since he costs nothing when you play him, basically. So he generates 4 mana and costs 2, and then is a 1-2 body. So it's just crazy. So I think Summoner Druid will get changed. I think if Summoner Druid and Tornado Outbreak get changed, Nienna won't be. But I wouldn't be shocked if Nienna gets changed and the other two don't. Nienna is a bit of a problem right now because elves don't run out of steam ever, and it means that they basically have a creature that isn't a tempo loss when you play them because it requires mostly 3 mana removal to deal with. And besides that, it's just really difficult to win as any deck against Nienna, because against control decks, say, oh, they can assassinate it. Yeah, but if they go Nienna and then Elf off the top and you assassinate it, you've lost. Like, the game's over, because you're 2 cards down, and they basically just played Ancient Wisdom, and you discarded an Assassinate, if you want to think about it that way. So, yeah, it's basically, it's too strong, and it is just way too strong. Elves does not deserve this kind of draw engine, and another card on this, this kind of section for stuff I think will be changed is Burning Rage for similar reasons. But yeah, aggro decks should run out of steam, and Nana stops them from doing that. So I think either their tempo or their card advantage will be changed. I don't think both will. I don't think both will. And I'm curious to see what they pick. Personally, I'd pick the card advantage because I think tempo gain is kind of Elves' thing. And it'd be kind of weird to have a green aggro deck that kind of has tempo gain and then also just has this draw engine. So yeah, I think Nienna will get changed overall. Now, for the other top decks, we've got Burning Rage for red. I think this will get redesigned entirely. The way it is currently just does not fit design and is really silly, and it just shouldn't exist. It basically is Wisdom in a card. I've said this before and I'll say it again, but it's basically Wisdom in a card. It draws you cards and ramps, and it's very, very overpowered and is the only reason red is doing so well right now. So I wouldn't be shocked if they nerf Burning Rage and then buffed up something else in Rage. But Burning Rage is just, it's way too powerful. It ramps your Word of Fire, it draws you infinite cards. You can't beat Burning Rage as a control deck ever. It's impossible because they draw more cards than you do. So it's just absolutely crazy, and I think this card will definitely get changed in the next patch. So besides that, one more set of overpowered cards here. I think Valor will be changed in some regard. I'm not sure how, but currently it's a 1 mana 3/3, and that's not really fair. And sometimes it's a 4/4 or 5/5. If you just have multiple, you just keep going up order levels. So I think Valor's want to get changed. Maybe not this patch, but I think if they nerfed Elves, Mono Order would just become too overpowered, so they'd have to knock the Incarnate down at some point. So I think this will get changed at some point. Maybe not next week, but definitely in the coming patches, since it's a little too strong currently. Carryfield Captain, I think this does not need a retreat ability. Carryfield Captain's seeing extensive play in both top decks right now, so I would not be shocked if this got knocked down a few pegs. It's just the second ability. The first ability and the body is good enough for a card, and it still be very, very good. But the second ability is just overkill. It's also very difficult to play with and around, and it's awkward and it's annoying to play against, and it just doesn't really add anything to the game, in my opinion. It's just adding a extra ability onto a card that's already very good. So I think the move Carry Field Captain to the support line will probably be removed, and yeah, that's all I'm going to say on this. I think it's a little too strong. Not by an insane amount, but a little bit, and I don't think that extra ability is even necessary. So that's all I've got for the Overpowered section, like the stuff that will just straight up be nerfed in the next patches, or at least I think will. Now, if we move on a little bit, as we just let's get rid of these so it's easier to have a look at things, shall we? All right, so I've got 8 cards which I think are either badly designed or just underpowered and could do with a bit of a bump up. Burning Rage is also technically there, but you never know. But anyway, so let's start with the one that we know is getting changed. We know Drayla's getting changed because they've said it's badly designed and everyone agrees with them. It's a card that currently does nothing. For the game, it's not constructed playable, and it is incredibly oppressive in trials and in casual play, so they're just getting rid of it. It's so silly. It only causes misery in the less competitive formats, and it does nothing in competitive. So yeah, Drayla is getting redesigned, and that's what we know. I mean, I've given a few suggestions for this. One of the suggestions I had was make it a 3/3 and then give it Mind Extortion as its ability, but then when it dies or when it leaves the battlefield, your opponent draws a card. So that was my kind of suggestion, and I still think that'd be very, very strong. But yeah, that's my suggestion for it. But there's an entire forum post of suggestions for changing Drayla, and I imagine they'll probably have a look at one, tweak it a bit, and then use it. But yeah, Drayla's gonna get changed either this month or next month because they've said they're not happy with it. Now, for the other just straight up badly designed cards, we've got the double whammy from Nature here and Wasp Swarm and Vegetation Blockade. Basically, it's the stalling package for Nature, where Vegetation Blockade is just pointless because they all die when they play a creature, and we tried figuring out how to buff it, and to be honest, every single suggestion that makes it playable makes it overpowered. So yeah, so I think Vegetation Blockade will just be scrapped and redone, to be honest. And Wasp Swarm's kind of similar. We were thinking is like, what could you do to make Wasp Swarm like playable? And then we realized we do not want a card like this playable because it's just a silly like another Angelic Song card. And pretty much everyone in chat when we were talking about this just agreed that that's not something that the game needs in addition. So I think Wasp Swarm will get redesigned entirely or even replaced because you just can't buff this into playability without annoying everyone, because the card is not something people actually want to play against. I mean, you move everything to support row, yeah, it stalls a turn, right? But if you make it instant, it becomes completely overpowered because you just wait for their combat step, put everything back, and then they can't move them forward again. And at just normal speed, it's just not very good, and then like it's a fog effect, so it just stops damage for a turn, and we just don't need these kinds of fog effects. So yeah, I think Wasp Swarm and Vegetation Blockade will just get redesigned, because then they don't belong in the game. They really don't, and you can't really buff them without making them incredibly irritating to play against. Alright, next on the list of cards that are just badly designed, Ruination. Now, Ruination is both underpowered and badly designed, in the fact that it's completely unplayable, but it's also just like, it's a really strange design. I don't think it really even needs to exist. Like, someone was suggesting making it like 5 mana, 4 levels, destroy all creatures, artifacts, and spells. That's kind of cool. It's actually not that, like, what I kind of like about an idea behind that is that, like, red is kind of the other color that could have something like that, because Dominion just straight up has Cataclysm, but red is the other color that does board sweeping, like if you look at Advanced Zash. So that'd be kind of cool, but then you've just basically introduced an extra set of Cataclysms, and then purple-red has 8. So yeah, I'm not sure about that one, I'll put it that way. So yeah, something has to be done with it. I do like the art piece, and like it's raining firewalls, yay, but it doesn't actually do anything, and that's the real problem with it. So I should imagine Ruination's going to get redesigned at some point, because it's such a bad card, and it just won't. I can't see a metagame where this is ever something that you'd want to play, because if artifacts are powerful enough that you need to play Ruination, you're probably playing your own artifacts, and then you lose all your artifacts to your own Ruination, so I just can't imagine a metagame where this is actually playable. Now, besides that, we move on to just the underpowered cards. I've got 5 cards here, which is an example of cards that I think require a buff in some regard. We'll start with the Dominion one, get it out of the way. Power Spike Armor. The implant that is so bad, it's actually a better removal spell than a buff. I made this joke before, but it's laughably bad. So, +1/+1 unblockable, yay. But the problem is that you put it on your opponent's thing, and then it loses the bonus immediately, and then it will kill it over like 3 turns. And that's actually a good Power Spike Armor. Yeah, the card is that bad. It's so bad, its drawback outweighs its benefit. By like a reasonable margin. It's just not... Yeah, it does not deserve to be called an implant, I'll put it that way. Like, I'd like Power Spike Armor to be converted into something like Deadly Instinct. Or, yeah, Deadly Instinct. So it's like a spell, not an implant, and it doesn't have a drawback, but it does something mediocre. So, like, maybe just say, target creature is unblockable, and it's a spell, but then it doesn't degrade over time. Like, maybe that's what you want to be looking at for Power Spike Armor. I still don't think it'd be playable, but the way it is currently is laughably bad. Besides that, we've got 2 picks from Wisdom. Me and Helios were talking about these 2. So they're 2 of the trifecta of awful 3-mana 1-level blue drops, along with Jim Battlemaster. But Jim Battlemaster is just a Trials card, right? So you can just play it in Trials. These 2 are just laughable. So Frost Elemental is horrific, for lack of a better term. And it could be so cool. And I think the suggestion I have for this was actually to change its ability to Flash Freeze. Like, just straight up damage, 1 damage, and freeze. I think that would actually be balanced, is the funny thing. Like, it is that weak that putting an extra damage on its ability would actually maybe balance it. Like, it sounds strong against something like Red, for instance, and it would be very, very strong against something like Gibber and Ronnie. But, I don't know. The fact that you have to go 3 into blue before going into anything else means that control decks can't use Assassinate. Or things like that, and it would also mean that you could actually play a more blue-centered control deck, because Frost Elemental would still be a control card, but the point is you could actually play maybe an Advanced Darius control deck with Frost Elementals, and play maybe red as well, because you've got the freeze effects. Things like that. Like, it opens up some more deck building options, because it wouldn't be something that, say, Dominion would really care about, because they already have Bloodseeking Mutant and, like, Assassinate and things like that. They already have these removal type spells or just creatures, but a lot of the other control decks just don't. Like, a good example of this is Corruption. Corruption Wisdom Control is something that people try to get working, but it just never really has the extra defense against grow-wide decks. Like, you got Harpy and that's it. But what happens if you don't want to play Harpy? What happens if you want to play, like, a Tombs of the Damned deck? Or you want to play like a more mid-rangey style that runs some level 1 creatures? Well, you can't do that because Harpy kills your own guys. So having a tool to maybe work a little bit better with that kind of style would actually be interesting. Now, the other suggestion here is Lightning Elemental. I think Lightning Elemental should be a 2-2. And yeah, I think it should just be a 2-2. 2-2, 4-speed, shock. I think that's good enough to see constructed play. It would see a lot of constructed play. It would see more Trials play as well. And it means that you could have some encouragement to play some blue tempo decks, which would be nice. I know I'm fairly biased towards blue tempo decks. But yeah, you could actually play some blue tempo decks, and you could play it with Kayanu. Be nice to get Kayanu into other sort of deck building. Like, currently there is a Kayanu deck, but it runs red, and it's just making use of the swift creatures that you can play at 3 mana. But Lightning Elemental, like, you use it with Kayanu, and then you get a 3-3 with 4 speed that shocks something. That's really good. And then you could say maybe blue-green Kayanu works now because you got Lightning Elemental and Library Guards in blue. So now you, say, have Library Guards, Lightning Elemental, and then you just play normal Elves with Kayanu maybe. And then you splash the blue, you get some extra tools in blue. That'd be cool. That's good deck building, like enabling, because it means that there's new types of decks kind of opened up. Because then you'd have something similar to like Fast and Furious from last year, which was blue-green elves. But there was just no point in doing it anymore. And that's, like, if they nerf down the rest of elves, then it'd be cool to see, like, the deck kind of transition into some other kinds of, like, dual-color decks. Those are a bit more interesting to actually look at. So anyway, this is my idea for Lightning Elemental. Now, the last two cards I've got here are well, the two very underutilized Corruption sort of heavy-hitting creatures. Now, Corruption has four, well, large creatures. They've got Succubus that sees extensive play because it has the drain effect when you play it. But then it has this trifecta of just one-speed creatures that never see play. Dread Knight, which is only good with Path, really. So yeah, Dread Knight, and then you've got Undead Hydra that never sees play ever, and Ziara that almost never sees play. I can't remember the last time I saw Ziara in play, actually. And it's really disappointing because half of Corruption is supposed to be these big, lumbering, like, massive undead creatures that are just very, very slow, but when they get there, they just have more force behind them than anything else. But these creatures just don't. Like, if you look at Undead Hydra is a laughing stock, especially considering the incarnates in the game right now. Like, it is smaller than the Deathbound Incarnate in almost all situations, and yeah, it's like, yeah, you got Unstoppable, sure, but you also cost almost twice as much and have less speed. So it's just not worth it. And then you compare it to Dread Knight, where you can play them both on curve at the same time, and one of them is bigger and makes up for the tempo loss when you play it, and that still isn't good enough to see play. So yeah, the Undead Hydra really needs some love in this regard. Now, I have made the suggestion before to make Undead Hydra like have a poison spit ability, because it's a Hydra, right? It's an Undead Hydra, so, like, Undead Hydras, I get the idea of it grows its heads back and gets my emblems, but it's not a living Hydra, so change its ability to something else, is my suggestion. Like, if you gave it some sort of Acid Breath ability where it distributed 2 weakness counters when you played it, give Corruption a little bit of help when it comes to dealing with large board states, because they just can't do it. As soon as a board state gets above 4 creatures or something, the Corruption deck has lost. That's generally the trend, and it's rather shocking how bad some of the removal gets when they have large board states to compete with. So yeah, give the Hydra some love, and I think everyone will appreciate it. Now, the last card is Ziara. Now, Ziara is just disappointing. Ziara really is one of those things where I actually saw someone Photoshop Ziara Sloth Rider because she's so slow and she's on a horse. Yeah, 1 speed on that horse, it's a sloth, but she's just too slow, and by the time you play this, that effect is very, very good at stopping aggro decks, but you're probably dead. So, like, you can't lower the level requirements, because that effect is too powerful on a lower requirement, because then you can play it earlier on curve, and that's just too strong. So you can't lower it to 3 levels, because Corruption decks already go to 3 levels, and then all the zombies live, and ZR kills everything else. But at 4 levels, it's bad. So my suggestion was actually to make it more of a mid-rangey creature, where either make it one-sided. Make the effect one-sided, so it's like a creature mirror breaker type thing. It doesn't affect your side, that'd be cool. Or make it like a 5/5 and 2 speed. And I'm not even joking. Like, make it a 5/5, 2 speed. Massive increase in stats, basically. It's just not good enough. It slows down the damage on their side, but it doesn't really kill much, and as a result, you usually just take a massive crackback anyway. So I'd like to see us be able to actually interact with the board a little bit more. Like, maybe change its ability to -1, -1, and -1 speed. Like, maybe that would be cool. I still don't think that would see play. It's just nowhere near where it needs to be right now. But yeah, I do think maybe 2 speed, and then say give everything on your opponent's side -1, -1, or make it 2 speed 5/5 or something. Just it needs some help in either the speed interaction or make its effect not symmetrical, because it's supposed to be the big bad creature in Corruption and it just isn't. And it's the only one of the 4 like giant creatures. Like, you've got Elder Red Dragon, Antriel, Karthus, Ziara. And Ziara is the most underwhelming of all of them. Like, Karthus can kill something when you play him, and then you got Antriel's the giant angel, and you got Red Dragon kills your opponent if it's left alive for any amount of time, and Ziara just doesn't do any of these things. So it's the only one of the giant legendary like 4-aspect 4-mana creatures that just sucks. So it really does need some love, and I hope that they buff this up in the coming patches a little bit. But anyway, that's my little spiel on cards that I think are going to be changed in the future in some regard, or I guess hope will be changed in the future. But yeah, for the next patch, I think it's just gonna be, my prediction would be Nienna, Burning Rage, and then like Incarnate or maybe Cavalry Field Captain, depending which way they want to go with that, and then maybe buff up one or two other cards that aren't being played much. But these are the kind of cards that I would like to see changed by the time the next set comes out, because I think that they would add a lot more to the game if they were actually buffed up, considering the decreased power level on some of the other cards I talked about earlier. But anyway, thank you all for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. If you have any feedback, want to ask me any questions about the video, put it in the comment section below. But as for now, it's been Jotto, signing off.